A billionaire's car breaks down in a snowstorm. A single mom's kindness changes his final journey. On the coldest night of the year, when Clara Martinez pulled over to help a stranded stranger on that desolate mountain road, she had no idea she was about to meet Richard Ashford, a dying billionaire who had lost faith in humanity. She had $3 in her wallet, a sick daughter waiting at home, and a heart too kind to pass by someone in need. What happened next would test everything she believed about kindness, sacrifice, and the unexpected ways grace finds us when we least expect it. This is the story of one night that changed two lives forever, and the lesson that would echo far beyond that snowstorm. The alarm clock shattered the silence at 4:30 in the morning, its harsh beeping cutting through the darkness of Clara Martinez's tiny bedroom. She reached over, instinctively silencing it before it could wake her daughter, Emma, who slept in the next room. For a moment, Clara lay still in the cold, gathering the strength to face another day. Outside, the December wind howled against the thin walls of their trailer, and she could see her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Clara was 34 years old, though the mirror lately suggested someone older. Life as a single mother in Pine Ridge, Colorado, had a way of aging you faster than the calendar allowed. She worked double shifts at Miller's Diner on Main Street, the morning shift from 6 to 2, then back again from 5 to midnight whenever they'd let her. Between shifts, she checked on Emma, helped with homework, and tried to keep their small home warm and their bellies full. As she dressed in the darkness, pulling on her worn waitress uniform, Clara thought about the bills stacked on the kitchen counter. The heating bill had doubled this month. Emma's asthma medication was due for a refill, and their insurance, the bare minimum she could afford, only covered part of it. The transmission in their old Honda was making a grinding sound that promised expensive repairs she couldn't afford, and Christmas was 3 weeks away. Clara walked quietly to Emma's room and peeked inside. Her 8-year-old daughter was curled beneath 2 blankets and her winter coat, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her breathing steady and peaceful. Emma's inhaler sat on the bedside table next to a library book about scientists. That girl had dreams bigger than Pine Ridge, bigger than their circumstances. She wanted to study medicine, to help people. Clara's heart swelled with pride and broke with worry in the same moment. "I'll make it work," Clara whispered to the sleeping child. "I always do." The morning shift at the diner was brutal. The breakfast rush brought ranchers, truckers, and early shift workers from the ski resort 20 miles up the mountain. Clara's feet ached within the first hour, but she kept her smile warm and her coffee pot full. Tips were better when you made people feel seen, feel human. She'd learned that lesson years ago. "More coffee, sweetheart?" she asked old Mr. Peterson, who came in every morning at 7 sharp. "You're an angel, Clara," he said, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "How's that little girl of yours?" "Smart as a whip," Clara said proudly. "Reading 3 grades ahead." "Takes after her mama," Mr. Peterson said, leaving an extra $1 on the table. Every dollar mattered. Every single one. Between the breakfast and dinner shifts, Clara hurried home to find Mrs. Chen, their elderly neighbor, sitting with Emma. The kind woman refused payment, but Clara always found small ways to help her in return, shoveling her walk, bringing groceries, fixing things around her house. "How was school, baby?" Clara asked, pulling Emma into a hug. "We learned about Florence Nightingale today," Emma said, her eyes bright with excitement despite the pallor in her cheeks. "She basically invented modern nursing, Mom. She saved so many soldiers. I want to be like her." Clara's heart squeezed. Emma had been fighting a cold for 2 weeks, and the wheezing was back despite the medication. They couldn't afford another emergency room visit. "Not this month." "Did you use your inhaler?" Clara asked gently. "Twice," Emma nodded. "I'm okay, Mom. Don't worry." But Clara always worried. It was a mother's job to worry, especially when you were doing it alone. Emma's father had left before she was born, leaving Clara with nothing but a baby on the way and a determination to build a life worth living. She'd kept her promise to herself. Emma would have better than she'd had. Emma would have chances, opportunities, love. As Clara prepared to head back for the evening shift, the first snowflakes began to fall. The weather forecast had been ominous all day, a major winter storm moving in from the north, expected to dump 2 feet of snow overnight. The roads up to the resort would be treacherous. Clara hesitated, watching the snow through the window. "Mom, you okay?" Emma asked. Clara turned and smiled. Just thinking. You be good for Mrs. Chen tonight, okay? I might be late if the storm gets bad. I will, Emma promised. Be careful driving. Always am, sweetheart. I love you. Love you more, Emma replied, their nightly ritual. The evening shift was slower than usual. People were staying home as the storm intensified. By 10 o'clock, only a handful of customers remained, mostly stranded travelers from the highway looking for hot coffee and shelter from the worsening conditions. Clara watched the snow accumulate outside, already 6 inches deep and showing no signs of stopping. Her manager, Tom, approached with concern in his eyes. Clara, you should head home. Roads are getting bad. I can close up. Clara glanced at the clock. She needed every hour, every tip. But Emma was alone except for Mrs. Chen, and the storm was intensifying. She nodded reluctantly, untying her apron. Thanks, Tom. Drive safe. The parking lot was a white blur. Clara brushed snow off her old Honda and climbed inside, shivering as the engine reluctantly turned over. The heater sputtered weakly, barely pushing out lukewarm air. She pulled out carefully onto Main Street, her windshield wipers working overtime against the heavy snowfall. The road home took her along Route 34, a winding mountain road that skirted the edge of the national forest. Normally a 20-minute drive, tonight it would take twice that. Clara gripped the steering wheel, leaning forward to see through the curtain of white. The road was barely visible, and she could feel her tires slipping occasionally despite her careful speed. She was halfway home when her headlights caught something ahead, a dark shape on the side of the road, barely visible through the storm. As she drew closer, Clara's heart jumped. It was a car, a luxury sedan pulled halfway into a ditch. Its hazard lights blinked weakly, already half buried in snow. Clara slowed, her better judgment warring with her conscience. It was late. The storm was dangerous. Emma was waiting. But someone could be hurt. Someone could be freezing to death out there. She thought of Emma, of what kind of person she wanted her daughter to become. The decision was already made. Clara pulled over and grabbed her flashlight from the glove compartment. The cold hit Clara like a physical blow as she stepped out of her car. The wind drove snow into her face, stinging her cheeks and making her eyes water. She pulled her thin coat tighter. It wasn't nearly warm enough for this weather, but it was all she had, and trudged through the ankle-deep snow toward the stranded vehicle. "Hello?" she called out, her voice nearly lost in the wind. "Is anyone in there? Are you hurt?" The luxury sedan was a Mercedes, black and expensive-looking, even covered in snow. Clara approached the driver's side window and knocked, shining her flashlight inside. A man sat in the driver's seat, and for a terrifying moment, Clara thought he might be dead. But then he moved slightly, turning his head toward her light. Clara tried the door. Locked. She knocked harder. "Sir, can you open the door?" After a long moment, she heard the click of the lock disengaging. Clara pulled the door open, and warm air from the car's heater spilled out. The man inside looked to be in his 70s, well-dressed in an expensive suit and overcoat. His face was pale, his breathing labored, and even in the dim light, Clara could see he was unwell. "Are you all right?" Clara asked, leaning in. "What happened?" The man looked at her with tired blue eyes. "Car slid off the road," he managed. "I called for help, but—" He gestured weakly at his phone. No signal. Clara glanced at the dash. The car was running, but the wheels were spinning uselessly in the ditch. "How long have you been here?" "Hour, maybe more. I'm not sure." An hour in these conditions, even in a running car, was dangerous. Clara made a quick assessment. The man was clearly sick or injured beyond just being cold. His breathing was too shallow, his color too pale. He needed help, and the storm was only getting worse. "We need to get you out of here," Clara said firmly. "Can you walk?" I'm not sure I should be moved," the man said slowly. "I have a heart condition. I was driving to Denver, to the hospital. I thought I could make it before the storm." Clara's nursing instincts, learned from years of caring for Emma and basic first aid courses, kicked in. A heart condition, pale color, labored breathing. This man could be having a cardiac event. Moving him could be risky, but leaving him here was certain death. The temperature was dropping fast, and his car could run out of gas or get completely buried. "Sir, I'm going to be honest with you," Clara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. This storm is getting worse. We're 20 miles from town, and there's no cell signal out here. If we stay, we could both freeze. I have a little girl at home who needs me, and I'm guessing someone needs you too. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to help you into my car, very slowly, very carefully. We'll take it easy, okay? The man studied her face for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted. Perhaps it was her directness, or the genuine concern in her eyes, or simply the realization that she was right. He nodded slightly. Okay, he whispered. What's your name? Clara. Clara Martinez. Richard, the man replied. Richard Ashford. Clara helped Richard out of his car, supporting his weight as they moved through the deepening snow. He was heavier than he looked, and she struggled with each step, but determination kept her moving. The wind howled around them, and for a moment Clara wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. What if they both got stuck now? What if she'd left Emma to become an orphan for a stranger? But then they were at her Honda, and she was helping Richard into the passenger seat, buckling him in, closing the door against the storm. Clara ran around to the driver's side and climbed in, her hands shaking from cold and adrenaline. Okay, she said, more to herself than to Richard. Okay, we can do this. She put the car in gear and eased back onto the road. The visibility was almost zero now, and she could barely see beyond the hood of her car. The wipers struggled against the accumulating snow. Every few seconds she felt the tires slip on the ice beneath the snow, and her stomach would clench with fear. Beside her, Richard breathed heavily, his eyes closed, one hand pressed against his chest. Richard, stay with me, Clara said, keeping her voice calm. Talk to me. Tell me about your family. Who's waiting for you in Denver? Richard opened his eyes slowly. No one, he said quietly. The hospital. It's for treatment. Cancer. Stage 4. I'm dying, Clara. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with finality. Clara's grip on the steering wheel tightened. I'm sorry, she said softly. I'm so sorry, but you're not alone right now, and we're going to get through this storm together. Why did you stop? Richard asked suddenly. You could have driven past. Most people would have. Clara was quiet for a moment, concentrating on navigating a particularly bad curve in the road. I have a daughter, she finally said. Emma. She's 8. If I teach her nothing else in this world, I want her to know that you don't drive past someone who needs help. You don't look away from suffering. You show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Richard made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You're a rare person, Clara Martinez. I'm just a mom doing the best I can, Clara replied, like most moms. They drove in silence for a while, the storm raging around them. Clara's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her entire body tense with concentration. Twice the car slid sideways and twice she managed to correct it. The minutes felt like hours. Clara, Richard said suddenly, his voice strained, I need you to know something. In my coat pocket, there's a bottle of nitroglycerin, heart medication. If I start to have severe chest pain, I need you to give me 1 tablet under my tongue. Clara's heart raced. Are you having chest pain now? Some, Richard admitted, but manageable. In case. We're going to make it, Clara said with more confidence than she felt. 10 more miles. We're going to make it. But even as she spoke, the car's engine made a grinding sound she knew too well. The transmission, already failing, was giving up entirely. Clara felt the power drain away, felt the car begin to slow despite her foot on the accelerator. No, 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 she whispered, pumping the gas pedal. Not now, please, not now. The car rolled to a stop in the middle of the road, the engine still running but refusing to engage. They were stuck, in the middle of a blizzard, miles from help, with a dying man who might be having a heart attack. Clara looked at Richard, then at the wall of white outside her windows. For the first time that night, she felt true fear. Clara's mind raced through their options, none of them good. They couldn't stay in the car indefinitely. The gas would run out and they'd freeze. They couldn't walk. Richard was too weak, and the storm was too severe. They had no cell signal to call for help. The road was deserted. No one else was foolish enough to be out in this weather. Clara, Richard said weakly, noticing her panic. It's all right. You did everything you could." "No," Clara said firmly, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "No, I didn't stop for you just to let us both freeze to death out here. There has to be something." She closed her eyes, picturing the road they'd been traveling. They'd passed something about a mile back. What was it? Then she remembered. The old ranger station. It had been abandoned for years, but the building might still provide shelter. Better than dying in a car. "Can you walk a little?" Clara asked Richard. "There's an old station about a mile back." "If we can make it there, a mile," Richard said doubtfully. "In this storm, I'll help you," Clara insisted. "We'll go slow, but we have to try." She could see Richard calculating his odds, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. "If we're going to do this, we should do it now before I get any weaker." Clara grabbed everything useful from the car: the emergency blanket from the trunk, a half-empty water bottle, her phone even though it had no signal, and a granola bar from her purse. She helped Richard out of the car and into the storm. The wind was a living thing, pushing against them with physical force. The snow was already mid-calf deep and getting deeper by the minute. Clara wrapped her arm around Richard's waist, and he leaned heavily on her as they began the agonizing journey back down the road. Each step was a battle. The wind tried to knock them over. The snow tried to trap their feet. The cold bit through their inadequate clothing, numbing their fingers and faces. Clara counted steps to keep herself focused. 1, 2, 3. Don't think about how many more. Just take the next step. 4, 5, 6. Richard stumbled, and Clara caught him, her own feet sliding in the snow. For a terrifying moment, they both nearly went down. If they fell, Clara wasn't sure she'd have the strength to get them both back up. "I'm sorry," Richard gasped. "I'm slowing you down. You should leave me and save yourself." "Not happening," Clara said through gritted teeth. "Come on, lean on me. We're going to make it." Time lost all meaning. There was only the storm, the struggle, the desperate push forward through the white darkness. Clara's legs screamed with exhaustion. Her lungs burned with the cold air. Her fingers had lost all feeling. But she kept moving, kept pulling Richard forward, kept refusing to give up. "Why?" Richard asked at one point, his words barely audible over the wind. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me." "Because someone would do it for Emma," Clara said simply. "Because we're supposed to help each other. That's what makes us human." Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 45 minutes, Clara's flashlight beam caught the outline of a building. The old ranger station. She nearly cried with relief. The door was locked, but Clara was beyond caring about property damage. She found a rock half buried in snow and smashed the window, reaching through to unlock the door from inside. They stumbled into the dark interior, and Clara pushed the door closed against the wind. It was warmer inside, not warm, but out of the wind made an incredible difference. Clara's flashlight revealed a single room with a potbelly stove, an old desk, some chairs, and a cot against one wall. Dust covered everything, and the air smelled of abandonment. But it was shelter. Clara helped Richard to the cot, and he collapsed onto it, his breathing ragged and labored. She wrapped the emergency blanket around him and then examined the stove. "Please let there be firewood," she prayed silently. There was a small stack of old logs in the corner, probably left years ago. The stove itself was rusty but intact. Clara had grown up in rural Colorado. She knew how to build a fire. She found old newspapers in the desk drawers, arranged the kindling, and used the lighter from her pocket. Thank God she'd brought it inside from the car. The fire caught slowly, reluctantly, but it caught. Within minutes, blessed warmth began to radiate from the stove. Clara added another log and then turned to check on Richard. He was pale, his lips slightly blue, his breathing too shallow. Clara's heart sank. He needed real medical care, and she had nothing to give him but a fire in her presence. "Richard," she said gently, kneeling beside the cot. "How's your pain? Do you need the nitroglycerin?" "Not yet," he whispered. "The pain is manageable." "Clara, I need to tell you something." "Save your strength," Clara urged. "No," Richard insisted, opening his eyes to look at her. "I need to say this, in case I don't get another chance." Clara took his hand, her cold fingers wrapping around his. "I'm a wealthy man," Richard began. "Very wealthy. I built my company from nothing, became successful beyond my dreams. But somewhere along the way, I became hard, cynical. I stopped trusting people. I believed everyone wanted something from me, that kindness was always transactional." He paused, breathing heavily. "6 months ago, I got my diagnosis. Terminal. No cure. I've been angry ever since. Angry at God, at the universe, at the unfairness of it all. I decided to drive myself to Denver tonight because I wanted to be in control, one last thing I could control. And then you stopped," Richard continued, his eyes filling with tears. "A woman with nothing, I can see it in your clothes, your car, the worry in your eyes. A woman with everything to lose, and you stopped. You're risking your life, risking never seeing your daughter again, for a dying old man you don't know." "Anyone would have," Clara started, but Richard shook his head. "No, they wouldn't. I've lived 73 years, Clara. I know what people do. You're rare. Your kindness is rare. And it's reminded me," his voice broke, "it's reminded me that there's still good in this world, that humanity still exists. You've given me something I thought I'd lost." "What's that?" Clara asked softly. "Hope," Richard whispered. "Not that I'll survive. I've made my peace with that, but hope that the world is better than I'd let myself believe, that love and sacrifice and goodness still matter." Clara felt tears freeze on her cheeks. She squeezed Richard's hand gently. They sat in silence, watching the fire, listening to the storm rage outside. Clara thought of Emma, prayed that Mrs. Chen had stayed with her, that her little girl wasn't frightened. She thought of all the moments that had led her to this point, every hardship, every struggle, every choice to keep being kind even when it hurt. "Tell me about Emma," Richard said after a while. And so Clara did. She told him about Emma's dreams of becoming a doctor, about her brilliant mind and generous heart. She told him about reading together every night, about Emma's questions about the stars and the ocean, and how things work. She told him about the struggles, the asthma, the medications they could barely afford, the fear that she wasn't giving her daughter enough. "You're giving her the most important thing," Richard said. "You're showing her how to be human, how to be good. That's worth more than any amount of money." The night wore on. Clara fed the fire, keeping it going to ward off the deadly cold. She gave Richard water and the granola bar, though he could barely eat. She talked to him, keeping him conscious and engaged, telling him stories about Pine Ridge, about the diner, about the small moments of beauty she found in everyday life. Around 3 in the morning, Richard's breathing became more labored. His hand went to his chest, and Clara saw pain cross his face. "The medication," he gasped. "Please." Clara fumbled in his coat pocket, found the small bottle, and shook out a tiny tablet. She placed it under Richard's tongue as he'd instructed, then held his hand, waiting, praying. Long minutes passed. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Richard's breathing eased. The pain in his face diminished slightly. He looked at Clara with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. They made it through the night together. Human connection against the darkness, warmth against the cold, hope against despair. Clara woke to pale gray light filtering through the grimy windows. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then the events of the night came rushing back, the storm. Richard, the desperate trek to the ranger station. She'd fallen asleep sitting on the floor beside Richard's cot, her head resting on the edge of the thin mattress. The fire had burned down to embers. Clara stood stiffly, her muscles protesting after a night on the hard floor in the cold. She added the last of the firewood to the stove and looked outside. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed into a pristine white landscape. Snow covered everything in deep, smooth drifts. The sky was clearing, showing patches of pale blue between scattered clouds. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Richard's voice was weak but clear. Clara turned to find him awake, watching her with those thoughtful blue eyes. "How are you feeling?" she asked, moving to his side. "Tired," Richard admitted. "Weak, but still here, thanks to you." He paused. "We survived the night." "We did," Clara said, relief flooding through her. In the dark hours, she'd been afraid she might wake to find Richard had passed away. The storm's over. I'm going to try my phone again. See if we have signal now. Her phone showed 1 bar of service enough. Clara's hands shook as she dialed 911. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? We need help, Clara said, her voice cracking with emotion. We're at the old ranger station on Route 34, mile marker 47. I have a man with a heart condition who needs immediate medical attention. We were stranded in last night's storm. Ma'am, stay calm. We're sending help right away. The roads are being cleared now. Can you tell me the patient's condition? Clara relayed Richard's symptoms, his medication use, everything she could think of. The dispatcher kept her on the line, giving instructions, offering reassurance. Help was coming. 20 minutes, maybe 30, depending on road conditions. Clara hung up and looked at Richard. They're coming. Of course they are, Richard said with a faint smile. You saved me, Clara, again. While they waited, Clara sat beside Richard and they talked. He told her about his life building his technology company, from a garage startup to a billion-dollar corporation, the successes and failures, the relationships sacrificed along the way. He'd been married once, briefly, decades ago. No children. His company had been his life, his legacy. I have regrets, Richard said quietly. I was so focused on building something, on succeeding, that I forgot to build a life. I forgot to connect with people, to love, to be part of a community. I thought money would fill that void. It didn't. It's not too late, Clara said gently. For me it is, Richard replied. But Clara, you have time. You have Emma. You're doing it right, choosing love over everything else, choosing to be kind even when it costs you. Don't lose that. Don't let the world make you hard. I won't, Clara promised. Emma won't let me. The sound of a helicopter broke the morning silence. Clara ran to the window and saw it descending into a clearing about 100 yards away. Within minutes, paramedics were at the door, professional and efficient, loading Richard onto a stretcher. Ma'am, you should come with us, one of the paramedics said to Clara. You've been exposed to extreme cold. We need to check you out. I need to get home to my daughter, Clara protested. We'll take you home, the paramedic assured her, but medical evaluation first, non-negotiable. Clara rode in the helicopter with Richard, holding his hand as they lifted into the air. Through the window, she could see her Honda, still sitting abandoned on the road, already half buried in snow. The ranger station looked tiny from above, and she marveled that they'd found it in the storm. At the hospital in Silverton, closer than Pine Ridge, doctors swarmed around Richard, whisking him away for tests and treatment. A nurse examined Clara, checking for frostbite and hypothermia. Miraculously, she was fine, cold, exhausted, dehydrated, but fine. You're very lucky, the nurse said. Both of you could have died out there. I know, Clara said softly. The sheriff's deputy appeared to take her statement about the accident and the night's events. Clara explained everything, her words tumbling out in a rush. The deputy listened carefully, taking notes. Ma'am, you're a hero, he said when she finished. What you did, risking your life like that takes real courage. Clara shook her head. I just did what anyone should do. But most people don't, the deputy said. That's why it matters. Finally, hours later, they let Clara call home. Emma answered on the first ring, her voice tight with worry. Mom, where are you, Mrs.? Chen said you didn't come home, and I was so scared. I'm okay, baby, Clara said, tears streaming down her face at the sound of her daughter's voice. I'm okay. There was a storm, and I had to help someone, and I couldn't get home. But I'm okay. I'll be home soon. Promise? Emma asked, her voice small and frightened. I promise, Clara said. I love you so much. I love you more, Emma whispered. The deputy arranged for Clara to be driven back to Pine Ridge. Before she left, she asked about Richard. The nurse told her he was stable, resting comfortably, but would need to be transferred to Denver for his ongoing cancer treatment. Can I see him? Clara asked. He's sleeping right now, the nurse said, but he left something for you. She handed Clara an envelope. Inside was a note in shaky handwriting. Clara, thank you for showing me that grace still exists in this world. You and Emma are in my thoughts and prayers. I hope our paths cross again. If you ever need anything, please call my lawyer." A business card was paper-clipped to the note. Clara looked at the card, a prestigious Denver law firm. She tucked it into her pocket, though she had no intention of using it. She hadn't helped Richard for a reward. She'd helped him because it was right. The drive home seemed to take forever. Clara stared out the window at the snow-covered landscape, processing everything that had happened. She thought about Richard's words, about regret and legacy, and what really mattered in life. She thought about the choices we make and the people we become. When the sheriff's car finally pulled up to her trailer, Emma came flying out the door, not even wearing a coat. Clara caught her daughter in her arms, holding her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo and the strawberry chapstick she loved. "I was so scared," Emma sobbed into Clara's shoulder. "I know, baby. I know, but I'm home now. I'm right here." Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway, tears running down her weathered face. Clara mouthed thank you to her, and the elderly woman nodded, understanding everything that didn't need to be said. Inside the warm trailer, Clara told Emma an edited version of the night's events, helping a sick man, getting stranded, finding shelter, being rescued. Emma listened with wide eyes, processing it all. "Were you scared, Mom?" Emma asked. "Yes," Clara admitted. "I was very scared. But sometimes you have to do the right thing even when you're scared." "You're brave," Emma said with absolute conviction. "No, honey. I'm just a mom, doing the best I can." That night, after Emma was safely tucked in bed, Clara sat at their small kitchen table and looked at the bills still waiting there. The heating bill, the medication costs, the car that was still stranded on Route 34 and might not even be salvageable, the weight of it all pressed down on her shoulders. But underneath that weight was something else, a quiet peace, a sense that she'd done something that mattered. She'd saved a life. She'd shown Emma what it meant to be good, to be kind, to sacrifice for others. No amount of money could buy that lesson. No financial struggle could diminish its value. Clara pulled out Richard's business card and looked at it for a long moment. Then she tucked it away in a drawer. Whatever happened next, she'd figure it out the way she always did. One day at a time, one problem at a time, one step at a time. She'd survived worse than this. She'd survive whatever came next. 3 days passed. Clara returned to work at the diner, her co-workers treating her like a celebrity after the local news ran a story about the dramatic rescue. The headline read, "Local waitress saves billionaire at blizzard." Clara hated the attention, but endured it with her usual grace. Her Honda had been towed back to town. The mechanic's verdict was grim. The transmission was completely shot, and fixing it would cost more than the car was worth. Clara added it to her growing list of problems, trying not to let the panic show. On the 4th day after the storm, Clara was working the morning shift when Tom called her to the phone. "Someone asking for you," he said with a curious expression. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and took the receiver. "This is Clara." "Ms. Martinez, my name is David Chen. I'm an attorney with Morrison, Chen and Associates in Denver. I represent Richard Ashford." Clara's heart skipped. "Is Richard okay?" "He's doing as well as can be expected," the lawyer said. "He's begun his treatment in Denver, but that's not why I'm calling. Mr. Ashford has asked me to handle some matters on his behalf regarding you and your daughter. Do you have time to meet with me? I can come to Pine Ridge this afternoon." What matters?" Clara asked, confused. "I prefer to discuss it in person, if that's all right. Would 2 o'clock work?" Clara agreed, though anxiety churned in her stomach. She had no idea what this could be about. At 2 o'clock sharp, a well-dressed man in his 50s arrived at the diner. Clara met him at a corner booth, sliding into the seat across from him with trembling hands. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for meeting with me," David Chen said, pulling papers from his briefcase. "I'll be direct. Mr. Ashford was deeply moved by your kindness during his time of need. He's asked me to handle several things on his behalf." He slid a document across the table. Clara stared at it, the words swimming before her eyes. It was a check, made out to her, for $50,000. "I can't accept this," Clara said immediately, pushing it back. "I didn't help him for money." "Mr. Ashford knows that," David said gently. "That's precisely why he wants you to have it," he said, and I quote, Clara Martinez showed me that goodness still exists. The least I can do is ease her burden a little. This is not payment, Miss Martinez. It's a gift from someone who has more than he needs to someone who has less than she deserves." Clara's vision blurred with tears. $50,000. It was more money than she'd seen in years of working at the diner. It would fix her car, pay her bills, cover Emma's medical expenses, give them breathing room for the first time in her life. "There's more," David continued, sliding another set of papers across the table. "Mr. Ashford has established an educational trust for Emma. It will fully fund her college education and medical school, should she choose to pursue that path." Clara couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. And finally, David said, "Mr. Ashford has asked if you would be willing to visit him in Denver when his treatment allows. He says your presence brings him peace." The tears came then, unstoppable. Clara covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. David Chen quietly pushed a box of tissues toward her and waited patiently for her to compose herself. "Why?" Clara finally managed. "Why would he do all this?" "Because you gave him something far more valuable than money," David said. "You gave him hope. You reminded him that human connection matters, that kindness is real, that we're meant to help each other. Mr. Ashford told me that in one night, you showed him more genuine compassion than he'd experienced in years. This is his way of saying thank you, and of trying to live differently in whatever time he has left." Clara looked at the check again, then at the trust documents for Emma. Her daughter would go to college, would become a doctor, would have the opportunities Clara had always dreamed of giving her. The burden she'd carried for so long, the constant worry, the crushing weight of never having enough, suddenly lifted, and she could breathe freely for the first time in years. "I'll accept it," Clara said quietly. "Not for me. For Emma. So she can have the future she deserves." "Mr. Ashford hoped you'd say that," David smiled. "He also hoped you'd say yes to visiting him." "Of course I will," Clara said. "I'd like to see him again." That evening, Clara sat down with Emma and explained what had happened. Emma listened with wide eyes, struggling to understand the magnitude of the change in their circumstances. "Does this mean you don't have to work so much anymore?" Emma asked hopefully. "It means I can breathe a little easier," Clara said. "But I'm not quitting the diner, honey. I like my job. I like helping people. That won't change. And I can really go to medical school?" Emma asked, her voice full of wonder. "You can really go to medical school," Clara confirmed, pulling her daughter close. "You can be anything you want to be, baby. The money takes away the obstacles, but it was always your brilliant mind and beautiful heart that were going to get you there." 2 weeks later, Clara and Emma drove to Denver to visit Richard. He was in a private room at the hospital, hooked up to various monitors and IVs, but his eyes were bright when they entered. "Clara," he said warmly, "and this must be Emma." Emma hung back shyly at first, but Richard's gentle manner soon put her at ease. They talked for an hour, Richard asking Emma about her dreams and her studies, Clara sharing stories about life in Pine Ridge. It felt natural, comfortable, like visiting an old friend. Before they left, Richard took Clara's hand. "I want you to know something," he said seriously. "These past weeks, knowing that what I'm doing for you and Emma makes a difference, it's given me more peace than all my years of success ever did. You saved my life that night, Clara, but more than that, you saved my soul. You reminded me what matters." "You would have done the same for someone else," Clara said. Richard shook his head. "The old me wouldn't have, but maybe the person I'm becoming would. You've changed me, Clara. In the time I have left, I want to live differently, to give differently, to love differently. You've shown me how." They visited Richard regularly over the next months. Clara watched as he transformed before her eyes, reaching out to estranged friends, donating vast sums to charities, spending time with people rather than just his work. He established a foundation to help single mothers, naming it after Emma. He volunteered at shelters. He became the person he'd always had the potential to be. The cancer was relentless, though. By spring, Richard was fading. Clara was with him near the end, holding his hand as she had that first night in the ranger station. "Thank you," Richard whispered, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for stopping." for caring, for showing me what it means to be human." "Thank you for letting me help you," Clara replied, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for the gift you've given Emma. Thank you for being my friend." Richard smiled one last time and closed his eyes. 10 years later, Clara stood in the audience at the University of Colorado Medical School graduation ceremony, her heart so full of pride it felt like it might burst. Emma Martinez walked across the stage in her cap and gown, accepting her diploma with a brilliant smile. She'd graduated top of her class. She'd been accepted into a prestigious residency program. She was going to be a doctor. Clara thought of Richard, wished he could see this moment. In a way, he was here. His gift had made this possible. His foundation continued to help hundreds of other single mothers and their children. His legacy lived on in Emma's achievement, in the lives touched by his generosity. After the ceremony, Emma found Clara in the crowd and threw her arms around her. "We did it, Mom," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You did it, honey," Clara corrected. "All I did was love you." "You did everything," Emma insisted. "You worked yourself to exhaustion for me. You sacrificed everything. You showed me what it means to be good, to help others, to never give up. Everything I am, I learned from watching you." Clara still worked at Miller's Diner, though she no longer needed to work double shifts. She'd used Richard's gift wisely, paid off all her debts, bought a small house, established savings for the future. But she kept working because she loved it, loved being part of the community, loved the simple act of serving others. The Emma Martinez Foundation, which Richard had established and which Clara now helped run, had provided educational assistance to over 200 single-parent families, every scholarship awarded, every mother who could afford medicine for her child, every student who went to college. It was a ripple effect of that one night in the snowstorm, when Clara had chosen kindness over convenience. On the anniversary of Richard's death, Clara and Emma visited his grave, bringing flowers and spending a quiet moment in remembrance. The headstone bore a simple inscription, "Richard Ashford." He learned, in the end, what mattered most. "Do you think he knew?" Emma asked softly. "How much he changed our lives?" "I think he knew how much we changed his," Clara replied. "And I think that mattered more to him." As they walked back to the car, Emma said, "Mom, I've been thinking, when I finish my residency, I want to come back to Pine Ridge, open a practice there. A lot of people in our community can't afford proper medical care. I want to help them." Clara stopped walking and looked at her daughter, this brilliant, compassionate young woman who had grown up watching her mother choose kindness even when it was hard, even when it hurt, even when no one would know. "You're going to change the world, baby," Clara said. "I learned from the best," Emma smiled. Years continued to pass. Emma did return to Pine Ridge, opening a clinic that charged patients based on their ability to pay. Many paid nothing at all. She treated ranch hands and resort workers, children and elderly folks, anyone who needed help. She met and married another doctor who shared her values. They had 2 children of their own. Clara became a grandmother, watching her grandchildren grow up in the small house she'd been able to buy with Richard's gift. She eventually retired from the diner, but remained active in the community, volunteering at the foundation, helping other mothers navigate the challenges of raising children alone. One winter evening, nearly 20 years after that fateful snowstorm, Clara sat by her fireplace with her grandchildren gathered around her. The youngest, a curious 6-year-old named Richard, in honor of the man who'd changed their family's trajectory, asked her to tell them a story. "Tell us about the night you saved a man in the snow," he pleaded. He'd heard it before, but children never tire of important stories. So Clara told them again. She told them about working double shifts and struggling to make ends meet, about seeing a car in a ditch and making the choice to stop, about helping a dying stranger through a blizzard, about finding shelter, about holding on through the darkest hours, about kindness and courage and the unexpected ways grace finds us. "Was it scary, Grandma?" little Richard asked. "Very scary," Clara admitted. "I was afraid I wouldn't make it home to your mother. I was afraid we'd both freeze. But sometimes, sweetheart, the right thing to do is also the scary thing to do. And we have to do it anyway, because we're supposed to help each other." Emma's daughter, 7-year-old Sophia, said solemnly, She'd heard her mother say it 1,000 times. "That's right, baby girl," Clara said, pulling her close. "Because we're supposed to help each other. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us good." Later, after the grandchildren had been tucked into bed, Emma joined Clara by the fire with 2 mugs of tea. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night?" Emma asked. "Sometimes," Clara admitted, "but then I think about Richard, about how much joy he found in his last months once he reconnected with his humanity. I think about you, about your career, about the patients you've helped. I think about all the families the foundation has supported, and I realize that one choice, one simple choice to stop and help created ripples that are still spreading." "It wasn't a simple choice, though," Emma said. "You risked everything, your life, your future with me, everything." "I did what any mother would want her daughter to do," Clara said. "I saw someone who needed help, and I helped them. That's all. That's everything." Emma leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, just as she had as a child. "I hope I'm teaching my kids the same lessons you taught me." "You are," Clara assured her, "every day, by who you are and how you live. That's the real legacy, honey. Not the money, not the foundation, not even the medical degree. It's the kindness you choose day after day, person after person. That's what changes the world." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the fire, thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment of peace and plenty. Outside, snow began to fall gently like a blessing, like a reminder. Clara thought of that younger version of herself, terrified and struggling, working double shifts and barely getting by. If she could go back and tell that woman what was coming, the fear, the risk, the cold night in the ranger station, but also the friendship, the gift, the transformation of her daughter's future, would she do it all again? In a heartbeat. Because some things matter more than safety. Some things matter more than comfort. Love matters. Kindness matters. Showing up for each other, especially when it's hard, especially when it costs us something that matters most of all. Richard Ashford had given Clara and Emma financial security, yes, but Clara had given Richard something far more valuable. She'd shown him that he was worth saving, that human connection was real, that love and sacrifice still existed in the world. She'd given him peace in his final months, and a way to leave a legacy that mattered. They'd saved each other, really. In that snowstorm, in that moment of choice, 2 lives had intersected and been transformed. The billionaire and the waitress, the dying man and the struggling mother. 2 people from different worlds who found their shared humanity on a frozen road in the middle of nowhere. And the ripples of that night continued to spread through Emma's patients, through the foundation's beneficiaries, through the grandchildren learning about kindness and courage around Clara's fireplace. One act of compassion, multiplied by time and love, creating more kindness than could ever be measured. This was the legacy Clara would leave behind. Not wealth or fame or recognition, but the simple truth that she'd lived by all her life. We're supposed to help each other. We're supposed to show up. We're supposed to be kind, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us good. That's what saves us all. This story teaches us that true wealth is measured not in dollars, but in dignity, kindness, and the courage to help others when they need it most. Clara Martinez had almost nothing in material terms, but she possessed something far more valuable: a generous heart and an unshakable commitment to doing what's right. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope, faith, and the beautiful resilience of the human spirit. Remember, you never know when your one act of kindness might change someone's life, or when someone's kindness might change yours. In a world that often feels cold and divided, we can choose to be the warmth, the help, the hope that someone desperately needs. Be like Clara. Stop when others need help. Choose kindness over convenience. Love courageously, and trust that goodness in the end always multiplies.